So, some of you might be starting to hear about the war between Pakistan and Afghanistan for the first time because Trump is talking about it, or because we've had some of the most violent flows of it, with now likely hundreds dead in Afghanistan as there were bombing in Kabul, Kandahar, one other province, in 3 locations across Afghanistan, as hundreds have likely died from these airstrikes. And the Taliban have responded with drone strikes of their own, as well as likely looks like suicide bombing attacks, which have also occurred. Now, whether or not the suicide bombings that have occurred is due to the Afghan Taliban specifically ordering those, whether it's due to the local Taliban doing those, whether it is like everything is not particularly clear yet. I know that suicide bombings have been threatened by those in Afghanistan, but whether or not they are directly conducting those is still like blurry as all fuck. But we do know that they are certainly conducting drone attacks. Likely, the suicide bombings that have happened so far are from the local Afghan, not the local Afghan Taliban, but the Pakistani Taliban, which can get safe harbor in Afghanistan. And so from Pakistan's perspective, this type of terrorism, getting safe harbor in Afghanistan in any manner, is obviously a threat to them. And so this is something that has angered them immensely. Afghanistan has a long-standing border dispute with Pakistan that has to do with their colonial era border that goes along the two nations. It's like nearly like a little over 2,000 miles. It's a very long border. And that border also divides the Pashtun community between Pakistan and Afghanistan. Now, the Taliban is a Pashtun organization, right? They won't just call it a Pashtun organization, but it's a Pashtun dominated organization. And because of that, they don't like that artificial divide that they see between the Pashtun community. And that divide has gotten stronger and stronger as the Pakistan government has not been too happy with the inflows and outflows of supporters of the Pakistani Taliban, which has carried out suicide bombing attacks. And of course, every time a suicide bombing attack like that happens, where's an area of pressure that they can add to try to combat these types of attacks? Well, they think the border, which then adds tensions between the Pashtun community, tensions between the Afghan government and Pakistan, and then the other non-addressed issue of the Afghan Taliban's relationship with the Pakistani Taliban continues. So this is the state of affairs that has led into the large airstrikes that Pakistan conducted against targets in Kabul, Kandahar, and in one other Afghan region, which then led to the Afghan drone attack responses, and has led to some even talking about suicide bombing attacks directly from Afghanistan instead of suicide bombing attacks that have so far been domestically happening in Pakistan from the local Pakistani Taliban. Trump has been asked about the fighting, which is right now being described as open war by the Pakistani defense officials. He responded to this outbreak of violence by saying, like, hey, did anybody ask you to intervene, Mr. Trump? And he said, I would, but I get along with Pakistan very well.
Pakistan, as you know very well, very, very well. You have a great prime minister, you have a great general there, you have a great leader that I think two of the people that I really respect a lot. And I think that Pakistan is doing terrifically well, yeah.
Pakistan is doing terrifically well. Now, this doesn't give you much detail. Like, doing terrifically well at what? Doing terrifically well at fighting terrorism, doing terrifically well fighting Afghanistan, doing terrifically well generally outside of this. I mean, it is true that the United States government has a good relationship with the Pakistan, and that's also true for the Trump administration. It's also true that the Trump administration probably does not have many friends in Kabul. And while he doesn't, I don't think he particularly wants to pick a fight with Kabul. He's not removing any sanctions. He's not giving up any frozen asset. He's not doing anything that's going to be making their life any easier anytime soon. That is not likely. He's not going to be making it any easier for aid organizations to operate within the country. So that has left it up to what countries to help Afghanistan redevelop? China. China has been a big investor in Pakistan, and China has also been a very, very big investor in Afghanistan. And so they've been able to get investment from other places, but the United States has not been a big fan of this new government, even if they were willing to negotiate a withdrawal. They were willing to negotiate a withdrawal because they didn't want to keep bleeding, not because they liked the Taliban. So there's no love lost. So if he can get on the good side of the Pakistani authorities by basically just smiling at them, patting them on the back and giving them a thumbs up, when America, in the past might have been asked to come in, stop the bloodshed, do something. Now he just gives a thumbs up to who he views as the party that's more aligned with America's interest, and they unleash the airstrikes. The United States spent enough time fighting in Afghanistan. Maybe it's somebody else's time to do some fighting in Afghanistan, might be the view. While also, again, getting to snuggle up to somebody, to a country that's in a very, very strategic position. So Trump's probably going to take a generally pro-Pakistani, while also having broad, vague aspirations towards peace that he'll talk about every once in a while. But so far, that hasn't even come into the picture. It's just Pakistan, oh Pakistan, I love thee, oh Pakistan. Now, there are negotiations, and those negotiations are being led by the Russians and the Chinese. Now, the Chinese are very interested in these negotiations between the Afghan Taliban and the government of Pakistan succeeding for the reasons I mentioned before. China invested quite a bit in Afghanistan after the new government came into power in order to help build roads, in order to help build institutions, because they needed money. They needed to be loaned money. They didn't have foreign capital. The United States did not want to work with them to get them foreign capital. China came in, and when Afghanistan was having one of the worst economic crises it has had in its modern era, China came in and helped them quite a lot. China's also invested quite a bit in its Belt and Road Initiative in Pakistan. So Pakistan has also been a big object of investment. And so, from a Chinese perspective, it is one thing to invest in the Belt and Road Initiative and then not get much of your investment back, or only get part of your investment back, right? It is one thing to make an investment like the Belt and Road Initiative, or make the investment that China made in China and then have all of it explode. To have the roads that you invested in explode, which would have been the foundation for the success of any future investment. To have the institutions that you helped build up explode. To have anything else that you invested in the country go boom. And the same thing will be true for Chinese investments in Pakistan. And you want to know something that's interesting. What is the Pakistani Taliban targeting in their terror attacks? They're targeting crowded places, which is common in suicide attacks. They've targeted things that are representative of the government, of course, trying to destabilize the state. But you want to know what else they've targeted? They've also targeted Chinese investments in Pakistan, directly trying to sever the economic connection between the Chinese state and the Pakistani state, and also trying to attack a vector by which the Pakistani government can support itself in its balancing act between China and the United States, while it's dealing with threats on now both sides of its borders, from India and from Pakistan. So China has quite a lot to lose. They have quite a lot to lose from Pakistani Taliban terror attacks on their investments. They have quite a lot to lose from potential Pakistani airstrikes on Afghanistan. Or if Pakistan ever decided, because it does have one of the most powerful militaries on the planet. I know it's probably not discussed much, but Pakistan does, in the United States, but Pakistan does have one of the most powerful armed forces on the planet, like top 10. And so if they were to take that armed force and march it across the border, Now, I know that's crazy to think about from an American perspective. Really? The British do what they did, they leave. The Russians do, the Soviets do what they did, they leave. The Americans do what they did, they leave. And now Pakistan's going to come in right after? That seems crazy. I mean, that's China invading Vietnam right after we left crazy, but that also did happen. And I do think that there might be a few Pakistani military leaders who are thinking like, "Hey, at the end of the day, if they're declaring that it's open war and they're right next to Afghanistan, the supply lines for Pakistan are a lot simpler invading Afghanistan than the supply lines for the Soviet Union or for the United States or for the British Empire." So, while again, I think this is still a very unlikely scenario because this could also mean that while they have forces in Afghanistan, that the Pakistani Taliban at home would have less forces at home to deal with them. It might not even necessarily directly deal with the issue if they're drawn into a long, drawn out conflict. It could come with a lot of casualties. It could be very expensive. So far, we're in the airstrike and across the border stage. That's what we're in. We're firing artillery, we're firing mortars, we're doing airstrikes across the border type of activity. Drones across the border, snipers across the border, trading smaller armed fire at checkpoints across the border. That's where we're at. Now, I know when Pakistan says they're in open war, and you have that on the Washington Post, you have that in Guardian headlines, you have that in multiple respectable news outlets, meaning it's a real statement from Pakistani defense officials that the first thought is their army's going to be marching on Kabul. But that is a very, very unlikely outcome due to all the disincentives that would come with the violence, the cost, and the possibility of success not being guaranteed, as much better funded armed forces were not able to occupy Afghanistan. But also, Pakistan is not going to tolerate a never ending cascade of attacks on Chinese investments, government buildings, police officers, security officials, or civilians, or anywhere, infrastructure. And they're not going to allow any government that's facilitating that, that's right next to them, that's within bombing range, to go unbombed with enough time. It just doesn't make sense for them to continue to do this, especially after negotiations with the Pakistani Taliban did not lead to an end to the terror bombings. There were terror bombings in Islamabad not that long ago. So I think that the possibility of these attempted Chinese, Russian, and other intermediaries trying to come in and negotiate a solution between the ISI and the Taliban, I think that there's a good chance that it fails. I think there's a good chance that it fails because Pakistan wants long-term commitments to stop facilitating it, to crack down on it even. Not to just not facilitate it, but to not be safe harbor, to not allow them to operate from their territory, which undoubtedly they are doing. And since right now the Taliban government has not given any signal that they're going to do that, and since they've come to power, what have they done? They've invested in bunkers and mountains. They've invested in things to harden their defenses. They do have more at their disposal than they would have 5 or 6 years ago against a similar incursion. So I don't see an immediate end to this in sight. What I do see is layered issues of border disputes and terror attacks, leading to probably months and months more of off again, on again clashes as the Pakistani government tries to find a way to use what they have an outsourced amount of, which is military power, to try to add more and more pressure on Afghanistan, which is going to anger one of Pakistan's biggest military and otherwise trading partners, China, which has made its investments in Afghanistan, and those very investments could be at risk from these attacks. But they also have their investments at risk from attacks in Afghanistan. It's complicated, but due to this web of lack of commitment to make any change, I think that there's going to be a continuation of violence here. And the hundreds dead will probably not be the only hundreds dead. I don't want to make too many predictions, but I think that this is not the last we're going to be hearing about violence from Afghanistan. And the big warning that I want to make is as much as Afghanistan can use the Afghan Taliban and their allowance of them to operate from their territory as a pressure on Pakistan, it is not impossible for Pakistan to do the same thing in Afghanistan. Some of you may remember when we were covering the fall of Afghanistan to the Taliban, the National Resistance Front, which is connected to northern Afghanistan and old rebel leaders against the Taliban that the American government actually worked with back in the day in the early 2000s, late 90s, in that time period. Well, there has been the first National Resistance Front attack in a very long time that was posted online footage of, killing 15 Taliban militants and injuring 23 others, according to the National Resistance Front. Now, if the Taliban can be a safe harbor for the Taliban in Afghanistan, for the Taliban in Pakistan, why couldn't the Pakistani government counter what they see as a proxy against them with another proxy against the Taliban, which could intensify the violence, making it not just a conflict between Pakistan, Afghanistan, and the Pakistani Taliban, but Pakistan, the Pakistani Taliban, Afghanistan, and the National Resistance Front of Afghanistan. Now, of course, it's a little early to be talking like that. They would actually have to get smuggling routes into the country. They would actually have to pull off getting them the resources they need. They would have to, do a lot of things that the ISI knows how to do. But it is something to think about, that this war has a lot of potentiality to expand beyond a traditional invasion. If the ISI thought that that had too much risk, that doesn't mean that they can't recruit other people to do their fighting for them. And as long as they have that disparity in air power, they're going to keep using it. I mean, when I was listening to the Taliban responding to the Pakistani airstrikes, they said they conducted their own airstrikes and that they used drones, as in they use like FPV drones and like that's calling that an airstrike is generous, but that just shows you an idea of like the military disparity and the type of equipment that each side is working with. I mean, a lot of what the Taliban is working with is stuff that they were able to essentially salvage from the armed forces of the United States.